Yeah, let's start the session. So first, welcome you everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning from wherever part of you are joining for this session. So thank you all for joining this session. So this evening, so welcome everyone. So we are next gen data aspirant community. So so if you don't know about next gen data aspirant community, so myself Inturi Suparnababu, I am the founder of this next gen data aspirants community, and I have 7+ years of experience in the data analytics field. So currently I am a Microsoft Fabric community super user. Ajay, can you introduce yourself?
Yep, thank you, Suparna. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Next Gen Data Aspirant community. My name is Ajay Babu. So I'm working as assistant BI manager at Genpact. So yeah, I do have around 6 years of experience in the data world. So yeah, once again, welcome all. And Suparna, can you move to another slide? So yeah, here are the session guidelines. Just I want to let you know brief. So be on mute throughout the session and respect other participant opinions. And whenever you have any questions, just you can post your question in the chat box, and like we will pick that question at the end of the session. And also like at the end of the session, we will conduct a Q&A. So you can raise your hand so that we can follow the queue. So that, yeah. Thank you, Suparna. And yeah,
Yeah, so let me. So today we have our speaker Nandan Hegde. So he is a data architect and he is a blogger and he is a 3 times Azure Data Community Champion and also Microsoft Fabric Community Super User and C Sharp Corner MVP also and the one and only data platform MVP from the Bangalore. So welcome Nandan Hegde. So the floor is yours.
So thank you, Suparna, for the warm introduction. So hello, everyone. A very good evening to all. Thank you for joining this session on accelerating data access and integration with shortcuts and mirroring in Microsoft Fabric. Now, before we proceed, I'll reintroduce myself. I am Nandan Hegde. I have overall 10+ years of experience in the data world, and I work as a data architect currently at Accenture. I'm also a trainer, and I have my own training organization called Data Sharks. I'm a 3 times Microsoft Data Platform MVP, a Microsoft Data Community Champion, a Microsoft Fabric Super User, and this is my blog site. You all can reach out to me via Twitter or via my LinkedIn account. Now enough about myself, and let's move on to the crux of the topic. Now before we move into deep dive into the concept, apologies in advance to those who are already familiar with what Microsoft Fabric is, but to the beginners, I'd like to give a brief crux of what Microsoft Fabric is. So Microsoft Fabric is basically a software as a service tool that Microsoft has created that provides everything from data movement, data transformation, data storage, real-time analytics and data science, and reporting and analytics. And everything is hosted on one logical concept of data foundation called One Lake. So Microsoft Fabric is an end-to-end analytics and data platform designed for enterprises that require a unified solution. So one can state that it's a one-stop shop for everything. Now, in today's world, there are multiple challenges with respect to the data accessibility. Your data is spread across, you have data across multiple sources, and those are in silos. Then it is because of that that you need to do a unified integration. There are chances that you duplicate your data with respect to integration aspect. And then in today's world, with data moving in, can everyone go on mute if possible? And the another major issue that we face today is with respect to latency, wherein the data is available at the source, but for it to be available at the reporting end, there seems to be some lag, which the clients do not want. And because of the duplication of data and other aspects, there is in turn increase in storage and compute cost. And in order to integrate the data in one common aspect, sometimes you have to write complex ETL processes even for just a simple analytical purposes. So to overcome these challenges, that's where the concept of the two features or what we call functionalities within Microsoft Fabric, that is shortcut and mirroring, comes in place. And that's what we would be covering today. Now, before we deep dive into the concept of shortcut and mirroring, let's take a back look with respect to what OneLake is, because that's the crux on which most of the thing happens within Microsoft Fabric. Now, in data world, there is a common concept called data lake. This is not specific to Microsoft Fabric per se, but this is a generic terminology in the data world, and it is cloud agnostic. So what is a data lake? So basically, a data lake can be considered as a centralized repository that allows the storage or allows for the storage of the structured data, semi-structured data, and unstructured data at scale. So it's unlike a traditional data warehouse or your relational databases that store data in predefined schemas. Data lakes are designed to hold vast amounts of uh, raw data, you can say, in its native format until it is needed. So Fabric uses one joint storage layer called OneLake as its foundation to house all of its data. So it's a logical storage of data that provides one way to access all the Fabric data across your tenant. So OneLake can also be referred to as your OneDrive for your data within your tenant.
Can you someone please go on mute?
Thank you. So OneLake is basically an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Basically, those who are familiar working in Azure PaaS, Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 is the data lake equivalent in the Azure PaaS ecosystem. And OneLake is basically hosted or is basically an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 itself that manages all your data and the artifacts across your domains and workspaces. Now, in addition to storing data, which can be ingested in multiple ways, correct? It also comes with a data virtualization concept called shortcuts. Now, shortcuts basically allows you to access and use data in near real time that is sitting in external storage locations like AWS S3 bucket, GCP, Dataverse, ADLS, etc. So this dotted line is basically a representation that one can access some of the external data present in external location in OneLake without having the need to physically replicate that data into the OneLake ecosystem. So shortcut is basically a data virtualization concept. Now those who are familiar with Azure Synapse dedicated pool, there you have something called as external tables or polybase. That's a way of data virtualization wherein you can query the data that is present in blobs and external locations without having the need to physically load that data into the dedicated pool. So shortcut are similar to that. So one can state that OneLake is a modern data lake solution that has been developed by Microsoft, designed to streamline the data management across different aspects and analytics in the cloud. And on top of that, it provides an additional speciality with respect to data virtualization via the concept of shortcuts. So one can state that Shortcuts provide direct access to the data without copying it in real time. And hence, it creates a unified view across OneLake and external storage. We'll deep dive into what we mean by unified views across OneLake and external storage. And it in turn eliminates data redundancy and accelerate integration. So shortcuts are objects within OneLake that point to other storage locations. Now let's take a practical look with respect to shortcuts. Now the location where the shortcut is mapping to can be an internal or an external location to the OneLake. The location that a shortcut points to is known as the target path of the shortcut. And the location where the shortcut appears is known as the shortcut path. Now enough theoretical, and now let's take a look with respect to what shortcuts is. Now, one aspect that I wanted to clarify is we saw that within Microsoft Fabric, it's multiple aspects, correct? There is data movement, data storage, data transformation, etc. Now, shortcuts can be created in only two offerings within Microsoft Fabric. One is what we call as Lakehouse. Lakehouse is, one can consider Lakehouse as a Azure Data Lake equivalent in the SaaS ecosystem. So it's also a data lake. It's a physical data lake, unlike OneLake, which is a logical data lake. So one can create shortcuts within the Lakehouse, and one can create shortcuts within the KQL database. In this demo, in order to understand the concept of shortcuts much more better, we would be focusing on shortcuts within the Lakehouse. Now, Lakehouse is divided into two categories or two sections per se, tables and files. Now, one aspect that I forgot to state is in Microsoft Fabric, Microsoft preserves the data in the underlying format of Delta Parquet. Now, those who are new to this concept of Delta Parquet, one can consider Delta Parquet as a columnar file format that has a much better comparison aspect and much more better analytical aspect for OLAP aspects. And Delta Parquet is basically Parquet file that has transaction logs, which in turn has its own benefits with respect to, since what does the Delta file contains? It contains different transactions and what all aspects were ingested. So that in turn helps me travel back with respect to analytical aspects, what we call as time travel. Meaning, imagine if I inserted something now, after 10 minutes I insert or update some data, different transactions are being captured in the Delta file. It's because of those transactions, in case if I want to check what was the state of my data 10 minutes back, I can go back to that particular time and check the state of that data. That is what we call as time travel. Hence, the underlying in most of the systems like Lakehouse, Fabric Warehouse, etc., or within Fabric ecosystem, the data that is being preserved in the underlying location is in the form of Delta Parquet file itself. Now, why that concept is necessary? It is because of the concept of while creating shortcuts within the Lakehouse. And we'll take a look when we are actually working on that. Now, as I stated, that Lakehouse has two sections, table section and file section. Now you can create shortcuts within table section and file section as well. Now, let me go ahead and create a shortcut in the table section first. Now, there are two ways how you can create shortcuts within the Fabric ecosystem. One is from the portal itself via the UI route that we would be taking a look in today's session. So when I click on the three ellipses or when we click on get data, there is an option to create a shortcut. So let me click on the three ellipses. and click on the new shortcut. This in turn would open something called as the shortcut wizard. And that's where the concept that I stated, that the location to which we are creating this mapping, the target path, can be internal or external to the 𝒁𝒂𝒏. Now, the external sources that is outside 𝒁𝒂𝒏 is your AWS S3 bucket, Azure Blob Storage, Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. This is AWS ecosystem. This is Azure PaaS ecosystem, GCP or the Google Cloud Platform, and this is Dataverse, which is another major data platform within Microsoft ecosystem. These are external sources, external to what we call as 𝒁𝒂𝒏. And this is internal sources, meaning imagine that as an organization within Fabric, you have different workspaces. So those who are familiar with Azure PaaS, how we have different resource groups, one can consider workspaces as equivalent of resource groups, which is logical grouping of your projects. Now imagine that if I have some data that is present within one workspace, I need that data to be merged with some other data that is present in another workspace. Now one aspect is I can physically replicate that data, but that's an unnecessary aspect because you would be duplicating the data. Hence the best aspect there would be for me to create a shortcut, and hence you can create shortcuts for internal sources within Microsoft ecosystem itself. So let's take a look with respect to first the internal source and then the external sources. So now when I click on the internal sources, remember that currently, okay, if you see here, currently I am logged in via an account called takeover, correct? Now when I try to create a shortcut within 𝒁𝒂𝒏, I'm only able to see these many components because it's only in these many components within the entire tenant does this account has access to. So within my corresponding current tenant, this account has access to this set of lake houses, warehouses, and one can create shortcuts to this set of objects, or we'll deep dive into the granular aspect. Now let me go to an account that has admin access in the tenant, meaning that has more access on more number of workspaces. So in this case, let me go to the lakehouse. Here I'm logged in via an account called Data Sharks. Now here, let me go ahead and try creating a shortcut. Now, if you see, I am able to see so many objects which was not available for the original account because the original account didn't had access to. So the first aspect is the person who is creating the shortcut needs to have access to the underlying source within the 𝒁𝒂𝒏 in order for him or her to create the shortcut. So in this case, I have another workspace called Fabric Shortcut auth. Within that, I have a lakehouse called Shortcut Lake. Correct? So what I'll do is I want to create. So let's take one step back. Currently here, if you see, I am in the Fabric demo workspace. Within Fabric demo workspace, I am into Fabric demo lakehouse. And in this workspace, my Data Sharks account has an access and the takeover account, the second account also has access. Whereas I have a workspace called Fabric Shortcut Auth, wherein I have a lakehouse called Shortcut Lake. And here if you see, it's only the Data Sharks account has access. The takeover account does not have access. Do remember this because this would help us in after 5 to 10 minutes to understand the concept of authentication and authorization. So now within this lakehouse, I have a table called fabric table that contains this data. That is, it contains 3 columns and 3 rows. Now I want to refer this data in this lakehouse. So let's go ahead and create a shortcut. Since this is this is lakehouse, which is internal to the lakehouse, we would be selecting the internal aspect, and I'll be selecting the shortcut lake. Next. Now, as I said, I can create shortcuts either from the table section or from the file section, and we'll take a look in the file section in a couple of minutes. So now I want to read the fabric table data that is present in this lakehouse in the corresponding lakehouse. So let me expand this table section here. Now I can see that there's one table. I can select that corresponding table. Now I can rename the table name that needs to be created. Imagine that if I do not rename this, the shortcut that would be created would be renamed as the fabric table itself, whatever table is the source table name. But I have the ability wherein I can rename it as per my aspect. Fabric table underscore shortcut. I'll authorize this. I'll create this. Now it takes a couple of seconds or minutes in order for it to create. Now, in case if I click this table here, now why is it taking time to load the preview? Because the lakehouse view basically executes a PySpark query. Now, in order for the cluster to get enabled, it takes a couple of seconds to minutes, post which it gets executed. So even if you have 2 or 3 rows, or even if you have millions of rows, the amount for it to display remains the same because it's the cluster that is getting activated, not a performance issue per se on the data side. Now, if you all see, I am able to see the data that is present in the fabric table here. But does it mean I physically duplicated that data? No. The underlying source of this data is still this lakehouse itself. Now, one difference is, let's observe. Let me zoom in a little. Now, take a look with respect to this symbol here. And take a look with respect to this symbol here. Here you would see a symbol of a bracket. Now, within the table section, if you see this symbol, it means that this is a shortcut. Whereas this symbol indicates that this is an actual delta table within the corresponding lakehouse itself, meaning this is a physical table, not a shortcut. So this is how you bifurcate whether a table is a physical delta table or this is a shortcut. Now, in case if I click on the 3 ellipses, if I click on the properties, I'll see that this is a shortcut type within the one lake. Whereas if I click on the properties here, it would state me that this is a delta managed table, physical table in itself. So this is with respect to creating a shortcut in the table section. Now the reason why, okay, let me take one step back. Let's create another shortcut. Now within the shortcut lakehouse wherein my source data is, I have a CSV file within the file section within the folder shortcut.csv, correct? Or now rather than taking a look with respect to internal sources, let me move to an external source. we saw that, let me duplicate this tab. Microsoft Fabric in external sources does support storage account as well. So I have created a storage account. Within that I have a container. Now let me try creating a new shortcut. Now this time let me create a shortcut to an Azure Blob storage. Now in case of 𝒁𝒂𝒏𝒅𝒂𝒏, when we are trying to create shortcuts within internal aspect, it was taking the login user's own authentication while creating the or while identifying the sources. That's what we observed a couple of minutes back. But while connecting to external sources, since it's an external source, it might be present in some external tenant as well, correct? So one cannot bound it via your own personal account only. Hence, you have to create a connection. So in order to, so now I need to create a connection to an Azure Blob storage. So for that, I need to provide the storage account name. Now you would see that I already have a connection established, correct? Pre-existing, but let's check how to exactly create such connections. So now you need to provide the storage account name or the URL. Then there are multiple types of authentication that is supported. You can use your own personal account in case if the storage account is within the same tenant and your account has access. You can use service principal authentication. You can use access account key or SAS URL authentication and workspace identity. Now workspace identity is like a managed identity concept, meaning every workspace under workspace setting can have its own unique ID that can be created. Meaning in case if I enable this within the Active Directory, within the Azure Active Directory or what we call as Microsoft Entra ID, a unique ID gets associated with the corresponding workspace name and it gets a GUID ID. Not a GUID ID and a specific ID called app ID. That app ID can be granted a role-based access on the Azure Blob. Thereby, I can connect to the storage account without having the need to provide any credential values. Microsoft ecosystem would be communicating with one another internally. Hence, that's the best form of authentication that can be supported. But one catch, this is only applicable. The managed identity is applicable only if they are in the same tenant. If they're in different tenant, then you have to use other forms of authentication. But in our case, I'll be going ahead with the account key itself. Hence, I'll be using the existing connection itself. That is the demo storage account blob connection. Now here, the shortcut is authenticating via the key, not via the personal account authentication here itself, or via an external account, or not from the user who has logged in. Now within this storage account, I have a container called Fabric Demo. Within that, I am able to see two folders, shortcut and shortcut text. Now let me select the shortcut text. So this folder contains a text file. I'll click on next. Now, for now, I'll skip this aspect of the transformation aspect, correct? And I'll explain that transformation aspect a little later. So again, as I said, you can rename it, but for now, let me create it. Now the shortcut is getting created, but there is one catch. Within the Fabric demo, within the shortcut text, if I open this text file, edit, I can see that there are some data present here. Now you can see that when I created the shortcut, it has created something called as unidentified. Now the reason it's not getting converted into a table, into a shortcut table, is because in order to create a shortcut within the table section, the underlying source location should have its data in the form of 𝒊𝒈𝒏 itself. Since the lakehouse table by default preserves the data in the form of 𝒊𝒈𝒏, shortcut from lakehouse or fabric warehouse into a lakehouse by default got created in the form of table itself, shortcut table, because the underlying format is 𝒊𝒈𝒏 itself. But since while creating the shortcut to the storage account, my underlying source data is in the form of text file, not in the form of 𝒊𝒈𝒏. Hence, it is unable to map it in the form of tables. Hence, I have to move this to the files section. So now you can see that within the file section, a shortcut got created mapping to the source that is present in the Azure Blob storage. And this symbol here, this bracket symbol represents here. Now, in case if I click on that folder, I can see that there is a text file. If I click on that text file, I'll be able to see the data that is present here. And it's the exact same data that is present here. Now, let me edit this data to some extent. 6, 3. So let me save this data now. So now the data is saved, correct? Now let me refresh this. Now, in case if I go back to the source and check the data, it's 13346, correct? Now let's take a look in the shortcut as well. 13346. So shortcuts are objects that you create within the Fabric ecosystem, or they are like virtual pointers wherein they point to external location and you are able to read the data from external location or from internal location in near real time without having the need to physically replicate that data. This is the benefit of shortcuts. So this was the aspect till 1 to 2 months back. Now, recently, around 1 or 2 months back, I don't remember the exact timeline, Microsoft has added 2 additional features within shortcuts. One is what we call as near real-time synchronization of CSV files into 𝒊𝒈𝒏 tables and data transformations of text files. That we will take a look in the coming aspect. But before we go that route of advanced transformation and other aspects, let's understand the concept of authentication and authorization. Correct? Now, let me create another shortcut. Now, this time, let me create a shortcut to the Dataverse, an external location, so that you all do not confuse that only shortcuts within table section can be created with internal sources. No. Shortcuts can be created from external location as well into the table sources as long as your underlying data is in the form of 𝒊𝒈𝒏. So here I'll connect to a Dataverse. Correct? Dataverse, in layman terminology, those who are familiar with Power Platform, Dataverse can be considered as the database of the Power Platform ecosystem of Microsoft in layman terminology, if I have to explain. Now, okay, this is the wrong Dataverse connection. Org 9. So basically, you can see that within Dataverse, there's an advanced concept called Fabric Link, correct? I won't deep dive into that. Let's assume that pre-default in the Dataverse, there is the underlying data is in the form of 𝒊𝒈𝒏 itself, correct? So now if I select these 2 tables, and there is no need that you need to select only one on one, correct? I can select multiple tables that I want to map together as a shortcut. I can edit rename changes, and then I'll create it. Now, if you see, all the corresponding shortcuts have been created in the table section itself to an external source, because the underlying data in the dataverse, a replica was created in the form of delta parquet lake because of the concept called fabric link. It's an advanced concept. Hence, I was able to create a shortcut in the table section directly, and I'm able to see the entire data. Now, before we move into some complex aspect of transformations and synchronizations, let's understand the concept of authentication. So for that, let me move to my takeover account. Let me refresh the corresponding page. Now, if you see that we are in the lakehouse view of the lakehouse, let me parallelly duplicate the tab. This is one major understanding which most of the people lack with respect to the shortcut aspect, correct? Now, if you see, these are the different shortcuts that are available now, correct? Now, in case if I click on this shortcut, which is the external location to Azure Blob Storage, I'm able to see the data. Now, let me try editing the data. Failed to save, because one aspect that I forgot to state is shortcuts are read-only interface, because your data is physically present in some external location, correct? So ideally, you cannot edit the data in the source location from shortcut. Shortcut is a read-only aspect, but I'm able to read all the data, and there is no error message that is visible here, correct? And one aspect is, let me go back to my original the admin aspect. Sorry, the original account. Now, in case when I created this shortcut, when I click on the ellipsis of the shortcut table and click on view files, it takes me to the underlying data, the delta parquet file that I stated, correct? That the underlying data is in the form of delta parquet itself. This is the parquet file, and this is the delta log file that is present. And this is basically the source location of the shortcut lake file itself. And there is no error message that is present here. But now, in case if I move to the account called takeover, when I click on the three ellipses and click on view files, I see that I'm able to, okay, I'm getting an error that could not load the file view. And in case if I hover over the error, it states that couldn't load column details. Remember, in this workspace, the takeover account or the workspace in which the lakehouse is, that has the shortcuts created. The takeover account also has admin access, and the datasharks account also has admin access. But the takeover account is unable to see the data for this shortcut, but is able to see the data for other shortcuts. What does it mean? Now, just to confuse you all a little, this is the lakehouse view. Now, lakehouse provides two views, a lakehouse view and a SQL Analytics endpoint view, correct? Now, let me query the shortcut data in the SQL Analytics endpoint view, correct? So, select all from, what are the shortcut names? DBO dot. Let's me query the shortcut status metadata partitioned for which it has access. I queried status metadata for which it has access. If I click on the view files, I am able to see the underlying 𝒊𝒈𝒂𝒏 file as well. Correct. And I am able to see the data. But now fabric table wherein I am getting that error. In case if I query this, wherein select all from dbo dot fabric table underscore shortcut, I am able to see the data. In the lakehouse view, I am not able to see the data. I'm getting an error. But in the SQL analytics endpoint view, I am able to see the data. And remember, this account does not have access to the workspace from where to the workspace to the lakehouse from where I have created the shortcut. But still I am able to query the data. So what is the significance of that? And that's where the concept of authentication understanding is critical. So when a user accesses this data through a shortcut to another OneLake location. Now let's split the authentication concept with respect to internal sources and external sources. Correct? For now, let's focus on internal sources only. Internal sources meaning OneLake sources. So when a user accesses the data through a shortcut to another OneLake location, OneLake uses the identity of the calling user to authorize access to the data in the target path of the shortcut. It means the user must have permission in the target location to read that data. So when a user is accessing the shortcut via lakehouse view or via those who are familiar with what we call as OneLake file explorer, etc., for them at that time the shortcut is authenticated and authorized based on the calling user's identity, meaning it's getting authenticated and authorized based on this account, meaning the user who is calling that corresponding table. But there is a catch. When a user accesses the shortcut through the Power BI semantic model or the T-SQL endpoint, what we call a SQL endpoint, the calling user's identity is not passed through to the shortcut target. The calling item owner's identity is passed instead, delegating access to the calling user. What it means is, in the lakehouse view, it's the takeover account whose identity is being passed to the source location. And since the takeover account does not have access to the underlying data, you are getting this error. But in case of the T-SQL or semantic model aspect, it's not the identity of the calling user, but the identity of the item owner that is delegated, meaning it is this lakehouse within which the shortcut is present. Correct? So the owner of this lakehouse identity is being passed via the T-SQL analytics endpoint. So any user who is having access within this workspace, though does not have access to the source data, would be able to access that source data by querying via the T-SQL analytics endpoint in case if the shortcut is present, and that shortcut is the shortcut source is accessible by this owner. Hence, even though the takeover account even though the takeover account does not have access to the underlying data, I am still able to query the data via the T-SQL analytics endpoint. So now let me take over the lakehouse via the takeover account. So here you can see that this lakehouse is currently governed by DataShark's account. Now let me take over by the takeover account. This would take a couple of time and since we are nearing the end of the hour and still there are multiple aspects, let me continue on the other aspects. So you can see that now this has been taken over by the takeover account. Now the takeover account is the owner. Now there would be some cache. We'll take a look. We'll come at the end for the authentication verification. But to deep dive on the authentication concept, we saw that in case of internal sources, authentication happens two ways, either via the calling user's identity or via the item owner's identity. But for external sources, it's not the calling or the item owner's identity. It's getting authenticated via the connection credential that we had established. Hence, any user who has access to that workspace need not have access in the source location itself. He or she can query this data because these are external sources and have been configured via the credential in the connection. So all the authentication is happening via that credential itself that has been created in the connection. Hence, it is accessible. This is the difference between internal sources and external sources. Now, moving to the two concept. Now I'll be little quicker on that since we are nearing the end of the time. Apologies. Next aspect is with respect to the advanced features that Microsoft added with respect to the shortcuts. Now let's take a look. So within my source shortcut lakehouse, I have a CSV file and I have a text file. Correct. Now let's understand the two new features. So let me create a new shortcut, this time to one lake. Within the shortcut lake, now let me select a CSV file, or sorry, let me select the shortcut text file itself. Here what I can do is, as of today, this feature is only applicable for text files only. Eventually, Microsoft does plan to add other files, but for today, it's just the text files that are supported. Now, you can do this set of AI transformations on the underlying text file. Correct. So since my underlying text file had different language aspect, let me translate it. Correct. So I'll use the translate function and I want to translate that into English. Now this I'm creating a connection to the lakehouse itself. Correct. So next, and then I'll rename this shortcut text underscore AI trans. I'll authorize this and I'll create it. Now, since this shortcut that I'm creating is using AI transformation, correct? Meaning in the backend, there are some Spark clusters, etc. that are getting executed. So this would take some time. So even if you see that a shortcut name has been created, there is no content up till now. Why? Because you can see that it's still creating. And I can check the progress here, wherein under manage shortcut, I can see that the shortcut got created, the folder, but the transformation is taking place as of now. And it would take couple of minutes or couple of seconds to minutes, depending upon the amount of data and the complexity of the transformations that are happening. Clear? So there are different types of AI transformations that are limited, like sentimental analysis, translate, etc. that are applicable. So it's a low code, no code way wherein rather than you having to integrate with other cognitive services, Microsoft itself has integrated that. And with just a click of 2 buttons, you are able to see the data, or you are able to leverage AI. This would take some time. So let me proceed with the next aspect, and we can take a look at the result eventually once uh, all are completed. So now let me create another shortcut. Now let me create a new shortcut to the table section this time. So here again shortcut link, next, under file section, under shortcut. Now, as I said, the AI translate transformation feature that was applicable, was visible, was only applicable for text file. Whereas this concept wherein even if your underlying data is in the CSV file, as of today, it's just CSV file, correct? Microsoft plans to upgrade it to JSON and other aspect, but the timeline is not fixed, and this is in preview feature. So in case if your underlying data is in the CSV file format, Microsoft provides an auto transformation applied, wherein it would auto transform your CSV data in the form of delta parquet itself, thereby creating the shortcut as a table rather than in the file section. So depending upon your delimiter, correct, these are the specific delimiters as of today, correct. You cannot create your own custom delimiter as of today. That's one limitation, meaning in case if your dual delimiter, custom delimiter, that is not present as of today, then you can use the auto transformation wherein it will transform from CSV to the delta parquet table. So shortcut underscore delta transformation. Sorry. So since here also that transformation that would be happening, correct? It takes time. So this is with respect to the two transformation features or functionalities that Microsoft has added. And you can see both of them are under manage aspect, meaning let's come back to this after a couple of minutes. So any queries up till now before we move to the concept of mirroring? Now one aspect is, let's me duplicate this tab and let me go to the SQL Analytics endpoint. Let me create a new SQL query. Select star from dbo.fabric table. Ideally, this would fail, correct? Because the underlying location needs to be taken. But it's because of cache that it's still authenticating via the owner. The owner to take over takes around 15 to 30 minutes to sometimes 1 hour. So the data that you are seeing here is the cache as of now, correct? But ideally, the concept would have been, once I execute this query, you would get an error stating that the underlying data is not accessible. Since I took over the ownership a couple of minutes, it takes around 1 to 2 15 to 1 hour, etc. It depends on the amount of aspect for the cache to clear. Hence you are able to see this data, but ideally you all can test it post the call in your aspect itself, wherein this, in case if I execute this tomorrow as a safe shot, correct, this would get an error stating that unauthorized access. So now let's move on to the concept of mirroring. Now what is mirroring? So shortcut is basically a concept of data virtualization wherein you are able to query the data in near real time from external location. But mirroring in Microsoft Fabric is basically a low cost and low latency solution to bring data from various systems together into the single analytics platform. So it basically replicates the data in near real time. So unlike shortcut wherein your data is still present in the source location itself, mirroring physically replicates that data into the Fabric OneLake itself. So mirroring manages the replication of the data and the metadata into your Fabric OneLake and conversion to Parquet in your analytics ready format. So it is to simplify hybrid and multi-cloud analytics. Now there are three types of mirroring, and some of this big credit goes to Nicola, who is also a Microsoft MVP who has its own blog site. So there are three types of mirroring that is available. One is database mirroring, wherein it's a classic mirroring strategy wherein you mirror those databases into the entire database or specific tables within that database into one lake. And we'll take a practical look with respect to this itself. Now metadata mirroring is basically, it synchronizes only the metadata only. Things like catalog name, schema and tables, like Databricks data catalog, correct? Unity catalog. So no real data is physically moved to Fabric. It is basically used to mirror Azure Databricks Unity catalog, just the metadata. Now open mirroring is a flexible one wherein it enables any application, personal application, it can be external third-party application, etc., to write changes directly into the OneLake governed by mirror database within the Fabric. So in case if I have to understand, this is Microsoft Fabric. Shortcuts are dotted lines wherein you can query the data that is present in external location without having the need to physically replicate them. Whereas mirroring is wherein you physically replicate the data from external sources, be it physical data or metadata into the OneLake. Now let's take a practical look on that aspect. Let me go to this. Okay. Before we move to this, I can see that the shortcuts have been successfully created. Let me refresh this. Now you can see that shortcut data transformation, correct, is now a delta Parquet table itself, even though the underlying table was in the form of CSV file, correct? So now I can view the files and the file path is a CSV path, which it has converted in the form of a Parquet itself. So rather than that being in file section, it automatically got converted into table section. Whereas okay, the AI transform text, you all can see that in the AI transformation text, it converted the languages. You can see that this is Namaskar in Kannada. It converted into hello. Hello. Basically, I have written all the different languages, Chinese, Japanese, etc. And all the terminologies are hello itself. And it has converted everything into hello, hello, hello. So the AI translation is specific for text file itself, and the delta transformation is only for CSV files as of today. Now let's move on to the mirroring since we are at the top of the hour. Now in case of mirroring, when I type mirror, these are the different types of mirroring that are available. Database mirroring that I was talking about is with respect to Azure Cosmos DB, Azure Database, Azure Databricks, Azure SQL Database, Azure SQL MI, and SQL Server, and Snowflake. Databricks is the metadata mirroring, and there is an open mirroring concept wherein you use the mirror database. In the mirror database, you get a landing zone, and as long as you are able to keep a metadata file and are able to synchronize 𝒊𝒈𝒏 file, you would be able to see the data in the mirrored database itself in layman terminology. But now let's take a look with respect to the mirrored Azure SQL database. And for that, I'll be connecting to this database. I'll be mirroring this database. So let me log into this database. So by the time I'm authenticating, etc., since we are close to the hour, I'm open to questions till whatever we have. So is there any questions that you all want to ask so that I can set up the environment?
So one question in the chat, Nandan, from Aditya. To simplify, we don't need access on the source where the exact data, but if you have access on the target workspace where shortcut is created, you can access the data.
No, that's what I suggested, correct? In case if you're using the T-SQL analytics endpoint, then you need not have access to the source data. You can just have access on the workspace wherein I have created the lakehouse shortcut, correct? But in case if you are using it from the lakehouse view or via the lakehouse explorer or OneLake file explorer, etc., and in case if it is an internal shortcut, you do need to have access to the source data. That's what we saw, correct? That in the takeover account, I was unable to see the I was getting an error for that internal table itself. Whereas in the T-SQL analytics endpoint, it's the owner's identity that is being taken across. So the owner of the lakehouse needs to have access on the source data for internal shortcut sources.
Yeah, thank you, Nandan.
Okay. So now, what is database mirroring? Azure SQL database mirroring, correct? Now here, let me connect to a new source. So here I have to provide the server details and other aspects of the database, correct? So this is my database. This is my server name of that database. So I need to provide the server name, meaning I need to create a connection to that corresponding database. This is my database. Any other queries till then?
No.
Okay. Now I'll be authenticating it via my organizational account itself, which is DataSharks. I'll connect. So here, imagine that you have multiple transactional databases, correct? Now, rather than querying the transactional database, hitting it directly for your analytical purpose, which in turn might have an impact on your applications as well, what mirroring does is it replicates that data in near real time from the Azure SQL database into the Fabric ecosystem. And you can execute queries on your Fabric open mirror database that has been created, which would not have any impact, correct? So now the database cannot be mirrored. Please turn on system assigned managed identity and set it as a primary identity. That's one of the first requirement. Meaning system assigned managed identity is not enabled at the SQL database. Basically, identity is not managed at a database level, but at the server level. So at the server level, this is currently off. I have to turn this on. Now, as I stated, correct, system assigned managed, similar to how workspace assigned managed identity, we have system assigned managed identity at an Azure offering level. So this would create a unique ID of this corresponding server in the Active Directory, which would be used for authentication and authorization purposes. So by the time this is happening, what is the difference between a mirrored database and a shortcut? Correct. Now, in case of shortcut, there is no physical data movement of the external table. Whereas in case of mirrored database, It is physically copying that external data into the one lake, and which we'll take a look eventually once the configuration is set up. Now here, the analysis, whenever I'm querying the data, the analysis occurs directly on the source data, meaning you're hitting the source engine itself. Whereas in case of mirror database, the analysis occurs on the mirror data in the one lake. Hence, it's a reliable performance because the data is stored within the Fabric ecosystem itself. Whereas the performance depends on the data source, except when the data is cached. That's one property that I'll cover eventually. Now, mirroring is suitable for frequent analysis when source system should not be directly queried. Whereas this is suitable for extremely large data sets stored in different locations. Let's see whether the mirror, the identity has been enabled. Correct. Now let me go back. Let me connect again. Now, by the time this is connecting to the source, one aspect is within the workspace settings, there is a property called enable shortcuts. So under it integration. So under one lake, there is a property called enable cache for shortcuts. So basically imagine that your data is some external location, the external sources. Imagine if you're querying that data. So what this would do is it would temporarily cache that data into the one lake. Now the cache would also have a storage cost, but that would be less than the physical data. So in case if you turn on, this in turn would improve the performance, and you can set up a retention period for the cache data that is present as a part of cost saving mechanism. Now, the second aspect that you can see is the database is set up on either a free tier or a standard tier with fewer than 100 DTU. Because as of now, the database that I have is 10 DTU only. So these are the limitations with respect to creating a mirroring aspect. You need to have a minimum of advanced DTU for mirroring to be supported in case of Azure SQL database. So again, I'll enable that increase the tier of the database, and then we would be able to see the replication. Or rather than waiting for this, let me select an existing connection itself. My fault. My the subscription is disabled wherein I already have, so I have to use this itself. So is it okay if the call gets extended by 10 minutes?
Yeah, no worries, Nandan. You can go ahead.
Apologies.
No worries.
Too many things.
Because the session is very interesting with practical examples.
Okay, so now the scaling has been done. Correct. Now in case if I refresh my database, I'll be able to see that it has 400 DTUs. So two main requirements I have enabled. That is, I have enabled managed identity at the server level, and I have increased the tier. Now you can see that I'm able to, I got some additional, I went to the next step. Now the thing is, either I can mirror an entire database or I can mirror only specific set of tables within the corresponding database. Correct. So now rather than mirroring all the tables, I want to mirror only specific tables. Correct. But I'm seeing certain warnings. Basically, certain data types, and there's certain limitations in case of mirroring. In case if your table has user defined data types or geospatial data types and some other user defined data types, correct? for user defined data type columns, those won't be mirrored into the Fabric ecosystem. So there is a set of limitations with respect to which all columns, which all data types can be mirrored. User defined data types cannot be mirrored. Geospatial data types cannot be mirrored. So for now, let me select the product table, product description table, sales order table, address table, correct? And now imagine that if I select this property and I create any new table within the Azure SQL database, it means that let it auto get replicated, but I do not want to auto replicate it. I only want a selected one. Now what should be my mirror database name? Either it can be the database that I'm mirroring, or I can provide a custom name for itself. And I'll click on create mirror database. So now what it would do is it would create a mirror database and a corresponding SQL Analytics endpoint. You can see that it is creating your mirror database, provisioning a SQL Analytics endpoint, and then it will start the replication aspect. Now, what is the cost of mirroring? Correct. So when you are doing a database mirroring and open mirroring, the Fabric compute and the OneLake storage are free up to a capacity based limit. Meaning, since you are creating a replica of the data, correct? So as you can see now, a mirror data, let me duplicate this tab. You can see that the status has started, and now as of now there is no data that has landed, correct? But at the workspace level you would see that a mirror database has been created and a corresponding SQL Analytics endpoint has been created, but data is yet to land, correct? Let's wait for the, because now the synchronization is yet happening. It takes a couple of depending upon the amount of data and the source, it takes couple of minutes to hours. Now the data is getting physically replicated. The storage for the replica is free up to a limit based on the capacity size. So basically mirroring offers free terabyte of mirroring storage for every capacity unit you have purchased. Meaning if you have an F64 capacity Fabric, you get 64 TB free storage amount for open mirroring aspect, exclusively for mirroring. OneLake storage is built if the free mirroring storage limit is exceeded or when the capacity is paused. And a running Fabric capacity is required for the initial setup of mirroring. Now you can see that the synchronization is in running state because I had selected these 4 specific tables. They are as of now running. Rows are yet to be replicated. By the time the rows are getting replicated, let me query the Azure SQL database. In the query editor, let me log in. Now imagine that if I want to edit or make changes, I can click on we'll come to that. Let's first complete this aspect. So now let me do select all from dbo.product description. Okay, my fault. It was not dbo dot, it is sales lt dot. So I'm able to see the data here. Correct. Now let me create an update script ready. Update sales product description. It seems my system has hung. Set description equal to test replica where product description ID equal to 3. Correct. Let's come to this later. First, let's check what is the state of the synchronization. You can see that the status has completed running, meaning the status is active, but these many rows have been replicated, and this was last completed as of 9/6, correct? And in case if I query the count of tables, correct, select count in the product table, I'll see that it would be 762, which is equivalent to this description count here. Now let me parallelly go to the SQL Analytics endpoint of the mirror database and query that product table data, description data, correct? Select all from sales LT dot product description. So now if you see where product ID equal to 3, let me focus on that specific product ID. Okay. Now this is case SQL Analytics endpoint is case sensitive because it's case sensitive collision that has been created. So I need to check what is the exact column name. It's product description ID, my fault. Product description ID equal to 3. It's chromely steel, correct? Now you saw that the data got replicated. Now let me update the data in the Azure SQL database. One row affected. Now in case if I execute select star and run this for product description ID equal to 3, test replicate. Now what would happen is within a matter of maximum 1 to 2 minutes, that corresponding change would get replicated here. Now how can I identify whether that change got replicated? It's based on the last completed aspect that I'll be able to confirm that the latest change has got replicated. Parallelly, by the time this is happening, as of now I had selected 4. Imagine I have to add an additional replication. I have to select a new table that I had added, correct? Under the configuration setting, you can select the configuration aspect and then select the necessary additional tables, new tables that you want to replicate in the ecosystem. So as of now only 4 were selected. I can select an additional one for it to replicate if need be. So now let me select dbo.errorlog and click on apply changes. So this concludes the concept of mirroring, wherein rather than you having to write some complex pipeline and logic to replicate the data in near real time from external system into the Fabric ecosystem, with just a few clicks, Microsoft itself took care of the replication. Now if you see here in the product description table, the last completed is 7:19 p.m. Meaning now in case if I query here, the data got replicated or the update. So even if you insert a data, that new data would get replicated. So this is the benefit of mirroring. So a simple application aspect and you are able to replicate the data in near real time in your Fabric ecosystem without having the need to build or bring your own complex logic. So this concludes the concept of shortcut and mirroring. So team, any queries?
Yeah, thank you, Nandan. Thanks for such a wonderful session. The complete session went very well. We learned a lot of new things, especially regarding these shortcuts and mirroring concept. So team, if you have any questions, please raise your hand or else please unmute yourself and ask. Yeah, yes, Rahul.
Hi, Nandan. Thank you for your session. I hope I'm audible, right?
Yes, you are audible, Rahul.
Okay, yeah. So, Nandan, I have one question. I don't know if it is very much, relevant to this particular session, but yeah, my point is like, suppose I'm working in an organization which have multiple business units. Okay, so if each business unit have their own different individual data architecture setup, for example, one is having a different setup in ETL data warehouse and different analytics tools, and the other business unit having different setup altogether. So maybe one is using Snowflake as the data warehouse. The other business unit might be having Fabric as an environment. So in that case, if we set up a centralized reporting hub, how would this Fabric setup will be useful? For example, to get data connected from different data warehouse, or to bring everything together. How would it be?
Correct. So that's the aspect that we discussed. Correct. This whole
Yeah. So this
call
mirroring
was with respect
is
to that.
interesting.
So
Yeah.
So now let's take an example. Correct. You said your organization is split across different aspects. One has a
Yeah.
Snowflake, one has a, let's say, Azure
Data, maybe
Blob,
Databricks or something.
one is in BigQuery. Correct.
Okay.
Now
Okay.
Fabric is your data and analytics platform. You have Power BI reports wherein you can do your analytics. So it's in Power BI, in Fabric ecosystem itself that you can do the, let's assume that you would be doing your analytics. Now, in order to do your analytics, all your data needs to be in one location for better aspects. Correct. So via the concept of shortcuts, correct, for GCP, you saw, correct, BigQuery is supported for shortcuts, GCP aspects, correct, not BigQuery. So Google bucket, correct. So external location, in case if they are supporting shortcuts, and in case if the underlying system, because in case of shortcuts you are querying the base source system itself, as long as the source team is comfortable hitting their system directly, you can use the concept of shortcut. But in case of mirroring, like you saw, right, Snowflake can also be mirrored. So you can set up the mirroring from Snowflake into the Fabric ecosystem. And in by default, most of the organization uses F64. F64 meaning you have 64 TB of free space. No organization would be leveraging 64 TB, correct? So even if you are using open mirroring, it is automatically replicating the data in near real time without you having to have an additional cost. And the data is in one location wherein you can now cross join and the other aspects. So as of today, there are limitations with respect to the sources that are supported across shortcuts and database mirroring. That's where the concept of open mirroring comes in, wherein in case of open mirroring, you can replicate that data near real time from external application into the mirror database. Or you do have other data engineering tools within Microsoft Fabric like data pipeline, data flow gen 2 notebooks, wherein you can replicate the data from external sources. And just an FYI, the data pipeline supports more than 100 different sources from SAP to external third-party systems, correct? In a scheduled basis from external system into Fabric. So your Fabric lakehouse can be one location wherein you have all the data, on top of which you do your data munging and transformation for your final analytics.
Okay. Okay. Yeah,
Clear?
makes sense. Yeah, thanks on that.
Any other queries?
So there is one question from chat from Vardhan. Considering the strengths and limitations of both mirror database and shortcut approach, which one is preferred in real world use cases?
As I said, both are preferred, correct? Both have its own benefit. In case, that's where we spoke about the difference, correct? In case if it's a heavy amount of data and the user is comfortable, the source team is comfortable allowing you to query the data directly, you would be using that because you need not duplicate that data, correct? Because remember, with data duplication comes other data governance aspect like GDPR, governance regulations, correct? That's an additional aspect as a data management aspect. Ideally, your data should be one source of truth only. But imagine your source team is not comfortable. Remember, if you're imagine you have a Amazon, correct? Amazon has a transactional database, you are booking, but someone is parallelly doing analysis. So sometimes it would give performance issues to the end users, to the application team, which is not acceptable. So at that time, it's better to replicate your data externally or some other aspects and do analytics on that external source rather than on the direct transactional database, correct? So depending upon the performance and data governance aspect, you can take a look with respect to shortcut or mirroring.
Yeah, thanks, Nandan.
Unfortunately, Synapse, I saw a question that Azure Synapse, can we mirror Azure Synapse? Unfortunately, Azure Synapse is not directly available as a part of mirroring. You will have to use open mirroring concept, wherein you would have to use your own custom application to enable the mirroring.
Thanks, Nandan, for answering the question. Vardhan, do you have any question?
No, that's it. Thanks, Nandan. You really helped. The explanation was on point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So team, if we don't have any questions, so we will go for a quiz. So let me share my screen. Hope my screen is visible. So before going to that, let me share you. We have a next event on the which is 20th on this month. So I request everyone please register for this event. This is going to uh, happening on the Power BI best practices. Power BI best practices. Okay. So please take your mobiles and please be ready. Just if you are attending from your personal machines by using the mobile, scan this QR code and enter the quiz. Or else if you are attending from the mobiles, so just go to slido.com and enter this code. So we are in the call 29 people. I'm expecting minimum 20 people for this quiz. Let's see. Okay. Suresh, Raj, Krishnakant, Vinita, Rahul, Aditya, Magadeshwaran, Raj, Preeti, Sritar. Oh, sorry. Okay, 16 people are there. 18, 19. Come on, one more people. If we got the one more people, then we will go. Yes. Okay. So just please look on your mobile screens. So I'm launching the first question. Okay, 21. Thank you. 22. Okay. So I'm launching the first question. Please look on your screens, mobile screens. Yeah, here is the first question. Yeah. Now the time is up. Let's see. Okay. Mixed answers. So let's see the correct answer. Okay, most of you have guessed correctly. Let's see the leaderboard. Oh, Srihari. Okay, Srihari. So, okay, I'm launching the next question. So please be look on your mobiles. Here is the next question. Okay, so let's see the correct answer. Yes, most of you, 75% of people guessed the answer correctly. Let's see the leaderboard now. Okay, Srihari is still leading the leaderboard. Okay, fine. So I'm launching the third question. Yes. Three, two, one. Time is up. Wow, 95 and 5. Let's see the correct answer. Yes, most of you have guessed correctly. So let's see the leaderboard now. Yeah, still Srihari is leading the board. And I'm launching the fourth question. Time is up. Okay, mixed set of answers. Let's see the correct answer. Yes, 55% of people corrected answer correctly. So let's see the leaderboard now. Okay, Gopi Krishna is leading the leaderboard. Now there is a change in the leaderboard. Okay, so I'm launching the final question. So please be ready. Yes. Five, four, three, two, one. Time is up. Okay, okay, okay. Almost you guessed correct answer. So now let's see the correct answer. Okay, stream mirroring. Okay, so let's see the winner of this quiz. Gopi Krishna. Okay, so
and one
yes,
aspect is you all can take a look with respect to the chat, correct? There you would see the error message that I stated, correct? In case if the SQL Analytics endpoint, if the owner of that lakehouse item does not have access to the shortcut, you will get this error that the query failed because access is denied on the table. Let me quickly, is it okay if I quickly share my screen?
yeah, yes.
Uh, So if you see here, this is another lake house because the current, as I said, the cache takes some time to clear out. But I had already, in my previous demo, I had already replicated it somewhere else, correct? So here, if you see, I have a shortcut to the multiple tables within the lake house, correct? And you can see the error, correct? But in the SQL Analytics endpoint, since the item owner does not have access to the underlying data, I'm getting this error. So this is the error that everyone would see. Even the admin who had created that shortcut initially would see, because in case of SQL Analytics endpoint, it's the item owner's identity that is passed. Just wanted to clarify on that. So this example demonstrates that.
Yes. Thanks, Nandan. Thanks. So team, so Magdeshwan, are you there in the call?
Yes, Suparna.
You can collect the Gopi Krishna details. Okay.
Yeah, fine. It's fine.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. So team, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
I have one question. So Nandan, when I'm doing the like any DML operation in SQL endpoint, I generally get an error saying that like DML operations are not allowed. Where if I do the same operation in SQL database, so it is acceptable. So I want to know whether any restriction given by admin to the SQL endpoint that it doesn't allow the DML operation, or it behaves like that.
So Arpita, SQL Analytics endpoints are read-only endpoints only by Microsoft. It's not an admin level setting. It's a Microsoft setting or a Microsoft limitation per se, or a strategy. I cannot state that, correct? What was their plan? But it's at a Microsoft product level itself, wherein in SQL Analytics endpoint can be read-only. You cannot write back via SQL Analytics endpoint. You can
Yes.
create views. You can create views, stored procedures, etc. But you cannot create tables or modify, meaning you can create virtual aspect, but you cannot create physical components via SQL Analytics endpoint.
Yes, that's correct, Arpita. So here I want to add one thing on top of this, Nandan. So I think can we do it by using the Spark notebook, correct?
No, SQL Analytics endpoint cannot be used. It's the actual lakehouse view via lakehouse view that you
Yes.
created, not the SQL Analytics endpoint. SQL Analytics endpoints are read only. Hence,
Yes.
the DBT tool is only applicable for Fabric Warehouse and not for the Lakehouse, because Lakehouse does not SQL Analytics endpoint does not support write back
Yes.
functionality.
Yeah, clear. So team, any questions? So if you don't have any questions, so let's wrap up the session. So thank you, Nandan. Thanks for your session. It is very insightful, and the throughout the session we know the lot of key concepts from you. So thank you, Nandan.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you, Nandan. Thank you everyone for attending this session.
Bye.
Thank you, Anand.
Thank you,
Thank you
Nandan.
for
Thank you.
for all. Thank you.